Welcome back to the Means Report, spending our half hour today with Georgia Congressman Jody Hice. He represents the 10th District. He's about to go back to work. And, you know, one of the topics on everybody's mind, Congressman Hice, is the 9/11 attacks that are now, I can't believe it, 15 years in the rearview mirror. But what is not in the rearview is the war on terror. How's it going? In your brief 2 years, how do you assess our fight against terror?
We've got a long ways to go, and it begins with the White House and the President of the United States. And unfortunately, we have a president right now who refuses to recognize the problem for what it is. You know, since 2014, there have been over 70 attacks from ISIS, 20 different countries, over 1,200 people killed, another 1,700 or so injured. We are not living in a safer world. It is getting more and more dangerous all the time. And yet we have a president that refuses to acknowledge the severity of the problem and refuses to recognize that we're dealing with radical Islamic terrorists.
What do you think Mr. Obama is doing then? Just ignoring information that could stem this tide of terrorists? Do you think he's just sticking his head in the sand? Because that doesn't sound like something that he would admit to.
Well, he certainly wouldn't admit to it. I agree with you with that, but reality is reality. I mean, we're watching a president go around the world apologizing for Americans, and we have just funded Iran. We've just made a deal with them. We've just paid $400 billion to them. I mean, on and on and on. We see a White House that is not addressing the problem and instead uses the various attacks as a bait and switch to talk about gun control. We've got to get serious about the ISIS problem that is a real threat to this country and the world, and we've got to eradicate it.
You mentioned that $400 million payment to Iran to allegedly pay off some old debts, but it ended up getting some long-held prisoners out of Iranian prisons. Do you think that opens the door for us, and I know everyone asks this question, to negotiating with terrorists, to paying ransom? Is that going to start happening now?
It better not, but it appears that that's what happened in this case, and the evidence seems to be mounting in that regard. We'll certainly be dealing with that as we get back this next week and begin dealing with that, but I know that is one of the items on the agenda that will be coming up.
All right, just play along here. Hypothetically speaking, let's say Hillary Clinton wins, then your frustrations aren't going to be alleviated anytime soon, are they?
No, but you know, here's one thing I do know. If we don't stay in the battleground and fight for our country, we're on the verge of it changing and altering permanently. We certainly are going to lose if we're not on the front ground. You know, this is a time for all of us to step up to the plate. I know a lot of people are weary and tired and frustrated, but there's a lot at stake, and we've got to stay on the front line and continue fighting for those things that have distinguished America from every other country in the world.
In your heart, can Trump win?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We're going to see how this plays out. You know, the polls are up and down all over the map at this point, so we'll see, but certainly he can win, and I'm going to do all I can to help.
Listen, somebody who did not do all they could to help was your man, Ted Cruz. You headed up his campaign in Georgia back in the day. He bowed out of the race and then didn't endorse Donald Trump at your own party's convention. What was his problem?
I don't know what his problem was. I think he made a mistake with that, and I certainly didn't agree with his choice to do so. The fact is, Trump is the nominee of the party, like him or not. That is no longer the issue. Now we are down to two candidates, one of which will be the president. It's either going to be Hillary or it's going to be Trump. And this is the time not to continue thinking, I wish this or I wish that. Now's the time to choose between the two and get behind one of them, and let's win.
Let me ask you a question about the budget, and it's really just a simple one. How will you and your colleagues tackle it? The deficit is approaching $20 trillion if we don't watch out. How can we shrink that thing?
We actually, in the House, we have passed a number of bills to try to shrink it. You know, unfortunately, it's difficult to move the ball past the finish line when you have a president and a Democrat Party, frankly, that is just so committed to so many spending programs. And there again, there are consequences to elections, so that places a greater emphasis on this upcoming election. But you know, I'm in favor, as I believe the majority of Americans, for a balanced budget amendment. Look, you have to do it in your home, I have to do it in our home, we do it here in Georgia, so many states across the country, but for some reason, the federal government believes that money grows on trees, that it's an unlimited resource to draw taxes or whatever. We've got to get our financial house in order. It has become a national security threat as well as an economic one.
It sounds like you're spinning your wheels up there a lot and banging your head against a wall. Did you realize that you would be this frustrated 2 years into your congressional career? It's tough to get things done.
It's very tough to get things done, but I was frustrated as a citizen prior to being involved politically. I mean, we're all frustrated. We're looking at a frustrated citizenry across our entire country. And yes, I'm still frustrated in Congress. I wish there was some sort of magic wand or something we could do just to change all this. It's a process. It seems like molasses. It's slow. But one thing I have been greatly encouraged in Washington is to find out that there are a number of people, there's some awesome people up there who every day wake up with the attitude of let's go to the battleground, let's take this thing back and turn it around.
Congressman, is it just a bunch of behind-the-scenes deal-making? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that as part of that molasses analogy, hey, if down the road you'll support this for me in my district, I'll help you with this for you and yours. Do you see a lot of that up there?
I don't know that I would call all of that behind the scenes. I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes activity that takes place. I'm not involved in those. I haven't been invited to those parties. But the reality of what you said, as a member of Congress, I realized early on that I am less than 1/4% of 1%. And so those odds are stacked against you. If you are going to move the ball in Washington, you've got to have a coalition of people who are united behind an idea, a policy, a piece of legislation. And so there's a lot of relationships that have to be established in order to move the ball forward. It takes 218 votes to pass a bill in the House. And that doesn't happen by yourself. So you've got to get out there and build the coalition of like-minded people around a particular topic or issue.
Well, I want to thank you for that answer. It's a very helpful one because so many lawmakers create this perception that they're going to go up there and make a change. It is about those relationships. So we'll continue to root for you on that front. Cybersecurity is huge here in the central Savannah River area. I know you know that. My question is, how are we perceived up there in Washington, D.C.? Do they know about us down here?
Absolutely. Absolutely they know. And one of the great areas of concern that I have is with our national security and our military, and in particular our cyber. We are extremely blessed in this area to have Fort Gordon and to now have the Cyber Command headquarters right here. And it is perceived with a great deal of respect in Washington, and people recognize, the cyber area is probably going to be one of the great areas of not only vulnerability worldwide, but areas that we have got to protect. That's where attacks are going to begin. Yeah,
I was going to ask you, can you give us a feel for how much of the war on terror is waged online? It seems like it's just going totally in that direction, just about.
I can't tell you percentage-wise, but we all know that is a major aspect of the war on terror and recruiting young people and so forth online, and then all the potential cyber attacks that are coming. So, we've got to protect cyber through that. There's so much of our intelligence, so much information is maintained, as well as our capabilities to eliminate whatever enemy we may be against. But right in line with that, we've got to defend our military personnel and make sure that they have the readiness, the preparation, and the equipment they need to get the job done that they're called upon to do.
In my minute that I have left, I'll just ask you to offer some sort of words of hope or encouragement, if you can, to the voters, the people of the 10th District, especially when it comes to jobs and new things coming here that will help our economy. Anything on the horizon that you can talk to us about in an area that has about a 10% unemployment rate?
Yeah, absolutely, not just with the economy, but all these areas that are extremely important to the American people in the 10th District that I hear over and over. Our national security, our Constitution. We're watching the abuse of our Constitution. The tax reform, our economy. We're pushing multiple policies to help get the regulators off our back and allow the free enterprise system to do what it does best. Addressing the poverty issue. All of these things are a part of a better way agenda that the Republican Party is pushing forward and is our priority in the coming year.
Well, we appreciate your efforts on the behalf of the voters of the 10th, and I appreciate your time today, Congressman.
Thank you very much, Brad.
Absolutely. Congressman Jody Hice, 10th Congressional District. We will continue to watch his progress in Washington, D.C.